This is the CAT S62 Pro disassembly. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload a new video. And if you need any tools, there are links in the description. First, the SIM tray needs to be removed. Next, we need to use a hairdryer or a heat gun to apply heat to the rubberized backplate, and then we're going to use our plastic pry tool to pry the backplate off. There are also some catches on the backplate that we need to lift up and pop off while we're prying the backplate off. Once the back is loose from the frame, we're going to carefully lift it up and move it from top to bottom, and be careful since the cable for the fingerprint reader is still attached to the main board, which we need to disconnect. Here's a better look at that plastic rubberized backplate. At this point, there are 13 T5 or Torx 5 screws which need to be removed. Once the screws are removed, the metal plate around the camera lens, as well as the metal plate covering the NFC antenna cable, needs to be removed. Now the NFC antenna cable can be disconnected from the main board. And then the thermal lens needs to be lifted up and removed out of its socket. Now the top plastic cover can be lifted up and removed. On this top plastic cover, there are some antenna lines drawn on it, which are these light gray color lines. Also, the NFC antenna is located here. Here's a look at the other side. Now that we have access to the battery cable, we need to disconnect that first. Once the battery cable is disconnected, we can proceed to disconnect the rest of the cables. There are two coaxial cables on the bottom right side of the board that need to be disconnected by popping them off. There's a copper metal plate on the back side of the front facing camera which needs to be lifted up. And there's a protective tape that needs to be peeled off which is covering the connector for the camera. Now the connectors for the camera and the thermal lens camera can be disconnected. Here's a better look at that. Now this metal plate on the back holding the battery can be lifted up and removed. There's some thermal plates holding this metal plate to the back of the battery which can be lifted up and gently pried off. Here's a better look at the battery. Once the battery is removed, we can see the flex cable for the screen which is underneath, routed through an opening over here in the mid frame. So if you need to replace your screen, you'd have to remove the back plate, as well as the screws on the top plastic cover, remove the thermal lens, disconnect the NFC antenna cable so you can remove the top plastic cover. At that point, you disconnect the battery cable and the screen cable and remove the battery, which will give you access to the screen cable, and then you heat up the front of the phone where the screen is to loosen up the adhesive underneath, pry your old screen off, apply new adhesive, and reapply your new screen, making sure you run the cable back through the opening in the mid frame and just reassemble your phone. Moving on, there's a single T4 screw holding down the main board which needs to be removed. Once the screw is removed, the main board can be lifted up and removed. On this side of the board, there's a secondary microphone located on top, the LED flash is located here, and there are rubber gaskets around all of the connectors. Once the shield on the board is removed, we can see thermal pads on these chips. On the other side of the board, the front-facing camera connector is located on top, which can be disconnected by popping it off. There's a notification LED on the other corner, and the SIM card and memory card reader is located here. Once the shield on the back of the board is removed, we can see more thermal pads on these chips. The bottom speaker assembly can be removed by lifting it up and pulling it out. There's another antenna line drawn on this plastic cover in the corner, and there's adhesive seal over the opening of the speaker. Now the flex cable connecting the bottom subboard to the main board needs to be disconnected. As well as the other two ends of the coaxial cable. There's a single T5 screw holding down the subboard that needs to be removed. Once that's removed, the subboard can be lifted up and removed. There's a rubber gasket around the connector, as well as the primary microphone. Here's a look at the other side. In order to remove the charger port, there are two T5 screws holding it down, as well as some adhesive holding the flex cable down. So this flex cable connects the charger port to the main board, as well as the button on this side. So you need to gently peel off this flex cable, as well as this one over here, as well as remove these two T5 screws in order to remove the charger port. Here's a better look at that, and there is a rubber gasket around the charger port. Moving on, the vibrator motor is located on the bottom right corner, and is held down with some adhesive. The flex cable for the power button and volume keys is over here, and that's also held down with some adhesive. So if you want to remove that, you can gently pry it off, and lift up the flex cable from the socket and remove it. The earpiece speaker is located on top, and that's also held down with some adhesive. And the flex cable for the proximity sensor is located here. If you wanted to remove that, you would just have to gently pry it off from the frame and remove it. Now if you needed to remove the actual physical keys, on the inside of the frame of the phone there are T5 screws all along which need to be removed, which are holding on the metal plates on the outside, or the borders of the phone. There are also T5 screws on the outside of the phone that have to be removed, so the metal frame of the phone on the outside can be removed, at which point it will give you access to removing the actual physical keys. So there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 metal plates. And there are T5 screws on the inside holding on the corresponding metal plates. So you'd only have to remove the screws for the metal plate you're trying to pull off. As far as repairability goes, I give this phone a 7 out of 10. The phone isn't too difficult to take apart, it just takes a lot of time. Now it's time to put the phone back together. Once everything's back in place, apply new adhesive and reapply your back plate. Flip over the phone, power it on, and you're done. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.